ado, I will now hand it over to our presenters.
Hey everybody, welcome to the webinar today. We're going to be talking about sustaining revenue and navigating the impact of tariffs on your fundraising, a practical guide for nonprofits. My name is Daryl Hatton. I'm founder and CEO of Connection Point, which has a brand called Fundraiser. Fundraisers help raise over $400 million for over 200,000 projects in almost 100 countries. And I'm joined today by Shannon Belvode. Shannon is our VP of Client Success.
Hi, everybody.
Photo up here. Sorry, go ahead, Shannon.
Just saying hi. Just saying hi. Go ahead.
The photo up here is of me when I did my TED Talk, TEDx talk on philanthropy as entertainment. Basically, the idea of how you use storytelling to increase the engagement of folks that are trying to help you help out your cause and raise money. So to give you some of the credentials of the fact that we've been doing this quite a long time and we understand this topic really quite well. So, you know, short thing about Fundraiser, it's really a platform that's focused on the problem of donor acquisition and retention. There's so much in the industry right now about managing existing donors and all that. We focus at the other end of the scale. We're trying to bring in net new donors and then keep them. And so we have this donor engagement and impact communication platform. It's really focused on fundraising success. There's unique features in there to make that work. Kind of interesting thing is it's free to use. There's no platform fee. We use a tipping model to support ourselves. And you know, our intention here is to work alongside tools you already have, your existing CRM and others. We don't have to replace it. We're here to extend your capabilities in a new way. Okay. Our agenda for the day, we wanted to give a brief overview of the state of the market, kind of what are the influencers on the market that are coming in from the current tariff changes that are going on and what's that doing to the economy. We want to talk about donor acquisition and retention within that context. So what happens, you know, in a downturn in the economy, what do we need to focus on? And from that, we want to talk about the short-term versus long-term strategy that you'd use in this time. How do we build up the results, and then how do we maintain the results? And to do that, we're going to explain what a crowdfunding growth engine is and how you use it for acquiring and retaining donors. And part of that is a very important step of how do you do the impact storytelling. That's back to my TEDx talk. The 7 steps of doing that. And we'll kind of emphasize one of the things that you must do if you want to retain these folks. And then it's been all esoteric at this point. It's all theory. So we're going to get in and we'll show you a couple of case studies and actually give you some examples of how this works in the real world and has worked successfully. And then hopefully we'll have some time for questions at the end. So state of the market, you know, the impact of tariffs is predicted to have a pretty big effect on the market. And a lot of that stems from the way people are feeling. Even though prices may not have adjusted at this point, there's a lot of uncertainty about what trade looks like under this new tariff regime. And that's leading people to worry about whether or not they'll have a job. And certainly with the amount of information that's coming out even recently about the decline in the number of jobs, maybe that the job market is stalling, that's increasing that anxiety. And when there's uncertainty, economic uncertainty, giving tends to fall off because it's a discretionary thing. It's, you know, we choose to do this and we don't have to buy it. And therefore, if I don't have to, sometimes I won't. The other part of that is that there's a lot of negative social media that are coming along. And the social media is really having an impact on the way people are feeling. And the overall result is a prediction that there'll be a reduction in the frequency and the size of donations. That's kind of following on the trend that's been happening for a few years, where we've seen you know, a decline in the number of retail or, you know, kind of online donors and small gift donors, which do over 50% of the gifts that are out there. They're, you know, like create more of the value of that, they're in decline. And this was a study that was done by a competitor called Zephy, and they published it in the Chronicle of Philanthropy in May. And they showed that when the announcement of the tariffs was, you know, the 180-day thing was put on, that in the week that followed, the donations dropped precipitously. Now, I don't think it stayed down there. We haven't had additional data from them and from others. We saw certainly a pressure on the giving to that it was harder than ever to get a donor to give in this environment. So what do we do about it? Well, donor acquisition in this environment is really about getting above the noise level of all that social media content, all the discussion of what's going on with tariffs, all the kind of marketing activities everybody's trying to do to solidify their position. The number one rule is don't be boring. We really have to not just be the same old, but we also have to keep it simple. The messaging that goes out really is not about trying to tell an elaborate story. It's to get their attention and get them one idea implanted very quickly. And because it's an economic time where there's challenges, we need to keep it very affordable. While we may instinctively want to optimize for a bigger gift, what we should actually be optimizing for is a smaller gift. And that may seem counterintuitive, and we'll explain. But we want to minimize what we're asking for, not maximize. Because the key thing we're trying to do is build conversions. We want to get the donor on and get a relationship with them, build some trust, be transparent about what's going on so that we can work with them. And one of the great ways to do that is using some testimonials or examples. But a really important point about acquisition is getting donors who are already with you to use social media to help them refer others to you. You know, keys to retention in this time frame is really about communicating impact. The donor at their heart wants to know that they made a difference. And the more personalized that you can make that, the more individualized they can make that, the more likely they are to feel it. And one of the best ways to personalize it is to visualize it. The more you can give them a visual representation of the impact that they've created, whether that's a photo of results or kind of a graphic that describes it, the more likely they are to retain it, because we do much better retaining visual information than we do auditory or written information that we've read. So, along that way, when we're typically doing donor work, we're told to kind of meter out the conversation. We want to not talk with them very often because we don't want to upset them, and we don't want them to turn off on us. The funny thing in social fundraising is that it's about the opposite. Following up with short, sweet updates about how the project, how the mission is going, what the work is that you're doing, turns it into an entertainment flow. A lot of the reasons we want to not ask people so often is because we spend all the time asking and not communicating. So, kind of in the realm of what new donors are expecting, like the online donors now and younger donors in particular, are looking for snackable content. They only want to look at something really quick. Hey, that's cool. I knew that was going on, or now I know that's going on. And you're trying to build up repetition with them for them to understand your mission. So kind of the summary of it is you over communicate a little bit and tell people more. Okay, let's talk about the short-term strategy versus the long-term strategy. Our short-term strategy is about acquiring supporters. It's not about maximizing the gift. What we're trying to do is to get in and get somebody engaged with us. And so one of the best things coming forward for this is Giving Tuesday. Giving Tuesday can be a day, we think of it as a day of experimentation, something that you can use as a catalyst to help try some different things within your organization and within your donor community. You want to leverage their curiosity. If they've already seen you a lot, you want to kind of break out of that mold. You want to do something different. I mentioned it before, but you're trying to minimize the gift size here. Like, it'd be great if they gave you $100, but if they gave you $10, you're winning. The winning there is that you want to get a new donor coming in to give you, or an existing donor who is not very active to give it to you. And so we want to maximize the number of people that sign up as opposed to the amount of money that we're raising, because we're trying to start relationships. It's kind of like speed dating a big group. We're trying to bring everybody in. And because one of the things we want to do is we want to get them to share. We want them to help us find new people to bring in, because that's one of the hardest topics that we have in marketing right now for causes, is how do we get to new donors? I mean, it's great to optimize the ones you've already got, or searching for major gifts in database. But if you're looking for retail donors, the best way to get there is through social sharing and referrals. So how does this play into the long-term strategy is that we really want to cultivate them as active advocates, as I was saying before. So the time frame from the time after we've acquired them and moving forward is all about strengthening the relationship. And again, we said sharing the personalized results of what the donor has accomplished with you is as important as possible. And we'll show you some techniques for making that affordable and easier to do, because it can feel like a lot of work, but done well, it doesn't have to be. You know, we recommend you use inclusive language. What we're trying to do is enroll them in your mission. So we should be always talking about what we are doing, not what I am doing in there, or what, you know, what we being the collective, including the donor, not just the team, not just the organization. And, you know, like I'm harping on it, but it's about increasing the engagement. We want them to kind of interact. If we get a small comment from them, or we get a like or a share, that's a win, because that's helping build the information distribution about your mission and your cause and your fundraising program, as opposed to just, you know, kind of everybody being quiet about it. You want them to chat about it. So how do you do this? Well, if you're using a crowdfunding growth engine, it makes it easier. What's a crowdfunding growth engine? This might look like a regular donor giving flywheel or something like that. It's not. It's got a few things that are quite different about it, and hopefully you can look and figure out what that is. But the big thing here is about getting the donor to be involved in the process and not just the passive participant in the process. And so the problem with the flywheel is, where do you start? So one of the ways I like to start is with the idea of engage. And engage is a step where we use a crowdfunding campaign page to tell the story of the cause and help the donor understand what's going on and how they can make a difference there and what their money is going to do. So intention is to inspire an emotional response that drives action. We want to get them get the feels going so that they'll take action. And the action we want to take is considered monetization. Now we call it monetize because it's not just about taking the gift, but that monetize step is really about helping them understand how they're making an impact. So where engage will say, hey, here's the problem that we're trying to solve, and here's what you can do. Monetize is about helping them visualize that and feel it. So we want to convert the emotional response into a contribution and action that creates a contribution. And we'll give you some examples in the use cases about what we mean by this monetize step, where you might have somebody grant a wish as the way that they're giving the gift, or that they might get some sort of reward in doing it that helps them understand what they did. Okay, so they've come in, they've read the story, they've made a contribution. One of the things that I talked about in my TED Talk is that we are biologically wired that when we do something for someone else, we're rewarded with serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, and endorphins. These are the feel-good hormones that come in. And this makes sense from the point of view of that we're a small, intelligent animal in the wild, and the only way for us to handle bigger problems was to work together. And so from an evolutionary point of view, it helps support us, that, you know, our bodies learn to support us. So in the moment after we made the contribution, we're typically flooded with some of these feel-good hormones. This is a perfect time to ask them to do something else for you. And at that point in the growth engine is what we call amplify. They're feeling good. Now we want them to share out something about what's happened, whether they share their gift, they share the impact that they're making, or they share why they like the cause, something like that. Ask them to share, because many of them will share at that point. And that helps get the distribution about information about your cause out into social networks. The more it's about their experience, the more effective it is. The more it's about money, or just the cause, the less effective it is. So getting the right story there is important. Okay, so time goes on, a couple of days, maybe a week or two. If we want to retain this donor, we need to get back to them and tell them what we did with their money. And so we want to communicate the impact of what the money that they gave us did. This shows a number of things. It shows that you're accountable for the work that you're doing. You are, but it shows it. It helps you build the value in their mind about the work that they've done with you and the work that you're doing for them, and it increases loyalty. Like, hey, I can trust you. You said you're going to do this. I gave you some money. You said you're going to go do this. Now you're reporting back that it got done, or steps towards getting it done have been done. You know, if it's a long-running project, obviously it's not necessarily have something to report, but the progress of it being, of getting towards it is something you report, and that works equally as well. Okay, so a little time goes by, and we come back with a bigger report, which we call from an update point of view. And using that update, we're really asking the donors to share the update. Here's the good news that we're happening with what we do. Would you share that with your friends? We're not asking them to give again. We're just saying, hey, would you tell everybody about it? This is a project you're part of. And so that we get them to rally the community around it, deliver a message. And what that does is it starts to attract potential donors to the campaign. Now, there's other things you can do at the attract phase, like take some of those posts that someone made and promote them in social media, add a little bit of funding to boost the visibility of it if it's a good endorsement or good message. Or you can use other ads or other types of ways to reinforce people coming to it. If you combine kind of social sharing and the paid models of the social networks and well, particularly social networks like Insta and Facebook, you can get more people attracted and they come in and engage. Now, if we've done a good job of retaining our donor, now we've got 2 people or 3 people going through this cycle, and over time it can spin faster and faster and lead to more growth. If we can get every donor to give us even out of 10 donors, if we can get 1 or 2 of them to bring us a new donor, we've got 10 to 20% growth coming on. And that's where the value of doing this work comes from. Okay, long story about that. If you're going to do a crowdfunding campaign, remember we said we got to keep it short and sweet. We've got to keep it simple. And a lot of the times we try and tell too complicated a story when we're running a fundraising appeal. We get into the details a little bit too much. And for an attention overwhelmed, people who are just, there's too much information coming in all the time, they just tune out. They don't want to hear it anymore. So we have a way of doing the storytelling that is really succinct, and it's designed to help get the message about your cause and the impact of what the donor will do, something you could say in kind of like an elevator pitch. Concept of an elevator pitch is if you get in at the bottom floor of the elevator with someone, you can tell them the whole story before you get out of the top. So you want it to be somewhere between around 2 minutes. So we break it up into these steps, and we start with something called the nod. And the nod is when you introduce your crowdfunding campaign, say something that everybody agrees with. That's a general comment about the problem you're solving and the world we're living in right now. And the reason we do this is we want them to already start with something they agree with. And this is not trying to trick them. This is trying to tell them we think alike. And that helps them understand whether or not they want to go forward. But when they've already made that decision to agree with you, because it's kind of an unconscious thing, they're more open and receptive to hearing the things you say next. So that's usually like a sentence or 2. The next thing we do is we want to explain the problem, the reason that your mission is there, kind of what the thing is that you're trying to solve. And we want to talk about it from the point of view of the issue that's in the community or the issue that you're trying to resolve, not in terms of the work that you're doing or the money. It's really about getting a clear idea so they go, oh no, there's a problem out there. And then describe the solution. what is it that your organization does to make this situation better? And again, we're not talking about, it's really about trying to get very succinct about helping somebody understand, okay, we take somebody that was feeling like this and we get them to feel like that. It's not about we gave them counseling services and da-da-da-da-da-da. We're trying to talk about what the solution accomplishes. Now we get to talk about money, and that's called the gap. And the gap is, what is the difference between the problem that we have and the solution we have? What's preventing us from getting those things to work together? That's the gap. And it's typically financial. We need more money to do more of this, or buy more of that, or implement this, etc. So we talk about the gap. The next part is to make the donor the hero. Explain to them how they can close the gap, what their actions, their gift is going to do. And it's not about solving the whole gap. They just want to solve one piece of the gap. And we call that a unit of impact. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. The final kind of step as they're coming out of this is to promise them something back. They're giving you something. The promise is, A, we're going to go deliver on what you asked us to do. And B, one of the cheapest things that you can do is to tell them you'll keep them informed. And then invite them to join your movement. Come along with us, make a gift. It's a call to action. Okay. But the number one thing to do in here is you have to honor that promise. And we talk about sharing the impact about 80% of the time and asking for something about 20% of the time. And most of those asks should be about sharing. You'll ask for a gift every once in a while, but not very often. And that's counterintuitive to what others have said, where ask every time. Ask every time is why people want to throw your messages away, is because they're being bombarded with a request. When you ask for help around sharing, then you give them something that is easier to do. But funny enough, we see people inspired to give from an ask to share. It's an unintended side effect, which is a great thing. Then you get the result. Okay, we're going to go into some case studies here. And the goal of the case study is to show you how the growth engine technique and the 7-step storytelling work in real campaigns. And we want to introduce you to some concepts, a little bit of lingo along the way about using updates and rewards and units of impact and impact stories and micro projects. These are all kind of things we're going to explain as we go along here. So we have 3 campaigns to show you. One's called Worry Monster, one's called Say Oui to Paris, and one's called The 12 Planes of Christmas. We're going to do a deep dive on the Worry Monster, and then we're going to do a quick touch on the other 2 to just kind of compare and contrast. Okay, Worry Monster campaign. This is a group that does mental health for children. This was their first crowdfunding campaign ever. And they had a very small team involved in it. They only had 2 people with no outside agency. And that included, they did the graphics themselves. So somebody had a little bit of talent in doing this, I have to admit. The reason I want to show it to you, it's a great example of using the 7-step storytelling. And we can break that down, step by step, and you'll see how in a minute. Their initial goal was $6,500. And they've done such a good job of the way they communicated it and the way they structured their campaign. They blew by their goal, shocked them in 24 hours. And they upped the goal twice after that and end up raising over $10,000. So, the technique can work. Okay, so what is it here? It's really good at storytelling. And that's such a crucial part of the engage step, is painting the picture of what the difference is. So in this case, their nod is very simple and powerful. They were launching this at just after the pandemic, and they said, over the past year, the mental health of each and every one of us has been challenged. And I think most people will go, yep, that was right. And so now I'm more interested in hearing what they say next. And the problem should be really concise. It's got to be short. So in this case, they used 2 paragraphs and 2 sentences to explain everything they did and an infographic, a little graphic about what it is. Again, they're helping someone visualize the problem. And they described very briefly that kids are having trouble. They're worried about their parents dying and things like that in the pandemic. So they painted a feeling And to me and many people read it, it was like, oh no, we didn't know this was going on. So then the point is about the solution. And in their case, their solution is kind of whimsical. The solution's got to be about solving the problem. What is the technique or the application, the thing that's done that changes the result? In this case, visuals were so much better than words. They were able to show the monster. They showed the monster working with the children and kind of the process that they used for helping put a child in counseling and how they use this worry monster doll. So they explained it really well. And they even kind of made the monster the hero in here as taking on the child's worries. So there's a little bit of storytelling, kind of fun with it. This is where they started to talk about the gap. How do they need money? So, what's the need? We have way more kids than we have worry monsters. So how can you solve the gap? How can you be the hero? Is that you can give us a worry monster or a worry monster in a counseling session, or a worry monster in a counseling session for the child and their parents. These are what we call units of impact. It's kind of a discrete amount. If I gave $30 here, it creates one level of impact. If I gave 65, it creates a different level. And by dividing it up into units of impact, it helps people choose the level of giving that they're capable of. So again, we were talking about minimizing. Keeping the gift sizes down in this point is actually can show some impact, but it doesn't have to be a big gift to get going. So, this is the keeping it affordable is really important in that monetize step. And this is what we mean by monetize, is that you're helping them decide what they're doing. They're basically shopping for the level of feeling that they can afford. And, again, visuals and graphics are your friend here. Okay, so the next part is the promise. And what is it that you're going to do for the donor in return for them giving you the gift? Well, first off, you're going to go deliver the result that you're trying to fund here. But also, in this case, they promise to keep you posted. We'll tell you how the campaign is going and what we're using those dolls for and how many kids we're helping, things like that. And then they lived up to the promise, and we'll show you. They missed a kind of important step in here in doing their campaign. They missed the invitation. Basically, they were relying on the giving part, that there's a giving button floating over top of the campaign and things like that to get people to actually give. It didn't hurt them too badly because they'd done such a great job of the story, but really at that point it would have been invite somebody to come over to the party, and they didn't do that. They did include something that we call an optional credentials path. Why are they good about what they do? So this is where you can talk about your mission and your goal and things like that, but you got to keep it short and sweet. So immediately after a contribution happened, they asked everybody for a share in that amplify step. I don't have a screenshot of that because it's kind of, sorry, I guess is basically the point. Recognized afterwards, I didn't do that. But again, we said if you want to retain these donors that we've acquired in a way like this, that especially if they haven't had a previous relationship with your cause because they were referred by a friend, it's really important to honor the promise and do what you said you're going to do and tell them about it. Tell them about it. So the Worry Monster they used updates, which is a feature of the crowdfunding platform, to communicate out to the people who had donated to this project what was going on. And they gave a little, it's like a blog post here, a short little post. Today we gifted our very first Worry Monster. Congratulations to the girl who got it. And they're making it very, very personal at that point. You can see what the gift is done. If you were an early donor to this cause, this is your result. Now it's personalized because it's about exactly the money that you gave, but it's not, this one is not individualized. It's not about specifically what your money did. But most people will go, hey, I might have bought that doll. And they will do transference on it. Gives them a feeling of ownership. So when we're telling impact stories about the way the money is being used, we're actually re-triggering those endorphins and serotonin and oxytocin. They feel good again. So they got a twofer on their project. And because of that, this is a great place you can ask them to share. They can do a rally step where they can go and share that, hey, this was a great result. And they were shocked that the number of people that reshared it, and that inspired other people to come and donate. They wanted to join the party. So it's a really important thing. Some people kind of minimize it because it feels like a lot of work. It doesn't have to be. Now, one of the things they did is over the course, they only ran this campaign for 14 days. And over the course of that, they shared a few times these updates. When an update is posted to this platform, it automatically notifies any donors who have subscribed to updates, which we encourage all of them to subscribe. So it automatically handles the communication. There's no mailing list to manage. There's no, did they log out? Did they opt out of retrieving them? All of that's managed by the platform for them. So they could use this to create urgency. And at the end, only 1 day left. They posted an update saying that, and they asked them to share it again. Some people would help them share it because they're really excited to see this completed. And so that feeds into the attract step, where that type of sharing now is something you might be able to promote, or just like commenting and resharing it on your own social media property can get it a lot more visibility. All right. Last thing is that, we have to, it seems funny that we have to remind everybody to say thank you for a gift coming in. When they finished this campaign, they posted the last update of, thank you, and they explained the overall result of this campaign. They started with their goal of 6,500, they got it up to 8,500, and then they got it all the way up to 10K along the way. They changed their goal. Every time they blew through the goal, they moved it, and it kept going. So updates are really good for a way to communicate that at the end, but the thing is to make it timely. You don't wait very long. Try and get it immediate, because we have short retention spans, right, in the current environment. Okay, so compare and contrast that to, say, We to Paris. This was a long-running project. This was the Canadian Olympic rowing team, and they had started running small campaigns that were typically getting, 10, 15, maybe $20,000. No, I think it was only 10 in the beginning. And they were trying to acquire donors at small giving levels so that they started to have a base, because they were planning ahead for the Olympics. They then did this campaign in the months ahead of the Olympics, and they wanted their unit of impact to be something kind of fun and really easy to explain. So they combined everything to do monthly and individual giving in a program that said, buy these athletes a breakfast. Just keep it simple, buy them breakfast. Now, to increase the size of the gift, they had kind of bundles. You could give $15 a day, or you could give a week's food, things like that. So they gave different ways for you to find the right level that people would participate. But this really worked. They used a little infographic that they did of showing how much money they'd raised in terms of a knife and fork. But they did pretty well. They got 18% over their goal. It says 2 years running because it was really only done over a course of a few weeks in the lead up to the Olympics. So, over time, they donated over 200% of what they'd already raised, going back to some of the same donors, by having a different take on it. And this is the kind of key thing. This is where we say it's short-term strategy versus long-term strategy. By acquiring small dollar value donors, you can warm them up into doing something bigger over time. All right. For complete change of pace, this is a really advanced example of, again, this has been a long-term project that they've done that they continue to grow. Commemorative Air Force does restoration of warplanes. They're based in Dallas, Texas. They have this fleet of planes that are spread out all over the country. And every year they do their 12 planes of Christmas, and they focus on 12. Well, actually, they focus on about 40 of them, but that's okay. They say it's 12 planes. They have some nice whimsical art. But what they do is this is an example of both the kind of, we started with small donors, we grew them, and then the idea of breaking a huge project up into smaller projects. Their budget is huge. They have to raise a lot of money every year to maintain this Air Force. And so if they tried to say, hey, we need to raise $500,000 for the Air Force, that feels daunting to a lot of people. It's a lot of money to raise. So they break it up into smaller projects where they fund each individual airplane. And it's kind of a variation of a peer-to-peer campaign. The goal of that is that it can really help get volunteers involved in raising money. So part of the campaign page that they have, this shows where they have a campaign for each of the individual aircraft. And the team associated with that aircraft, the volunteers and that maintain it and grow it, are responsible for telling the story of that particular plane, which they love to do. So it's not a hard work for them, and share that out with the community. And it's a lot easier for them to do that because they're passionate about the plane. So they're sharing their plane, not the Air Force. And by dividing and conquering here, it makes it easier to manage the workload of this. This is a lot of work across a lot of people, but together they raised over $500,000. And if you take a look at the end, this is an example of one of the sub-campaigns that is part of the overall process. All the money kind of rolls up here. Is first off, they were early on using some really nice AI there to generate that plane. That's a pretty cool picture. But the point is that they, you can see how they were able to tell the individual stories of different parts of the project. And that meant that a donor can follow their interest. Oh, I like this plane. Oh, I like that plane. To learn more about it, and then they're more willing to give. And in this case, they used the rewards concept where the donor might get something back. They gave them a little pin if they had donated to this restoration grant. Some of the other planes had caps or bomber jackets or swag or t-shirts or things like that that they sold as part of this campaign. So it's kind of a combination of commerce and a swag shop and donations all together. But because of the size of it, it worked really, really well. So when they first started working with us in 2001, they raised $271,000. They moved over from CrowdRise as a platform. And the first year we did better than the CrowdRise platform at 271. We kind of coached them on some of the techniques and working with them to build this base of donors who know this model and work with them. And they raised $588K in 2023 for 120% growth over 2 years. So that's kind of the power of using these techniques of getting donors in a smaller level and then getting them to give bigger gifts over time, and certainly to get them to make a recurring, give again. So if you want to start your engine, the methodology, we published the whole methodology on our website. And if you scan that 2D code, it'll take you to a custom page that's all about the methodology. You can do it, and you're completely independent to do it, and it's just a little slower to do. Or you can use a growth engine with our crowdfunding strategists. This is a thing that we do for free to consult with you about how you might apply this to your particular project. And if you're interested in that, type the word grow into the chat and we can connect with you and talk to you about it. Okay, so summary here. From a strategy point of view, the short-term strategy, acquire small value donors at this time. Focus on the conversion and not on the optimization of the size. The long-term strategy is retain them as advocates. And in doing that, you get them to be repeat supporters and they help you find new donors. For a storytelling strategy, we suggest you use the 7 steps when you're doing crowdfunding, because it means that you get through the noise and get the donor to understand more quickly, and they're more likely to convert and make a gift. And from a technology strategy, you can implement this using your own tools, or you can use the crowdfunding growth engine we have to build a support community. So, your action plan, I really encourage a lot of people to use Giving Tuesday as an experimental time. This is something you're doing over and above, and it's a great place to test social fundraising techniques because the audience is primed for hearing new things. They're being asked to give by multiple people. It's a great place to get your corporate partners to say, hey, we really like this cause. If you're going to give this year, give to them and get that message out in that way. It costs you nothing from them as a sponsor, but it can really increase the size of your audience. So, if you want help with your strategy, you talk with us. We give expert guidance here. It's not a fee service. It's about using it with us and helping. We help you raise more money. And, you know, kind of, if you're feeling a little, this may be not for this audience, but I know a few people were feeling kind of the headwinds of these tariffs on their giving. We said, keep your chin up. We can keep going. We can get through this together. All right. If you have any questions, again, type grow into the chat and we can start connect you. You can email us at pros@fundraiser and we can, that's just a quick way to do it. When you get this presentation, these fundraiser hubs are a link. And that takes you back to a website we have with lots of content on methodology and how to make crowdfunding campaigns work and that kind of thing. And then, you know, we'll get the email out to you with the presentation afterwards. And now we kind of got about 5 minutes, I think, for questions. Thank you for listening. So if you have any questions, type them into the chat and we can take it up from there. Don't be shy. As you know, as you've seen, this is a fire hose of information. And one of the reasons we record it and one of the reasons we have supporting materials is it's a deep dive on a methodology. It's a little different, but what we know works. And this is why we're trying to promote it more. Lauren, did you see anything? Or I think maybe we're good.
Yeah, there's no questions right now.
So that was Shannon.
That was me. Yeah.
So for everybody, Shannon is our VP of Client Success. And the #1 feedback I get about Shannon after a group has worked with her is that she's become the new best friend, because she is very, very generous in trying to help understand the issues for your cause and then how to help you get the funding you need. We just were onboarding a fiscal sponsor that has about 230 projects this week. And we're all excited because we're looking at the work that they're doing and so excited to help them. And we're literally, you know, working with each of those groups independently over the next little while to make sure their strategies are up to date. They're moving off another platform in the industry that's having challenges right now. And we got it done in about, from time they first called us to now, about 14 days, we moved the 230 odd projects over to a new platform, set them up with a campaign, and we're doing training session this afternoon. So give you some idea of the kind of work that we do. Well, at that point, I think just thank everybody and hope you'll reach out and we'll talk again. And otherwise, I hope you enjoy your day.
Bye, everybody.
Sounds good. Thank you, Daryl and Shannon. This workshop has now come to a close. If you're interested in receiving the recording and materials from today's workshop, you can download them at the bottom of our free webinar page or email us at program@nonprofitlearninglab.org. Thank you so much for participating. And again, thank you, Daryl and Shannon, for educating our community.
Great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.